Good morning. How are you all doing today? Welcome to the liberation of my soul, and so glad to be back here with you all. Today we're going to talk about a book that really has changed my life as well as The Power of Now. It's called Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walch. I always mess that name up every time. This book is unbelievable. Unbelievable. It talks about this man, Neil Walch, who is a writer, obviously, and he was writing his book, and he was having a problem. He was having writer's block, and he was going through a whole bunch of stuff, and he got disgusted. And so he decided to write a letter to God. He said, I'll write a letter to the biggest victimizer in the world, in the universe. I'll write a letter to God. Well, the man starts writing this letter, and all of a sudden, he'd write a question down, and out of nowhere, an answer would form in his head. Something that he realized wasn't coming from his own resources. He realized that this was coming from outside of him. Like I say it all the time, the mind is like a receiver to the universe. It's like it's not unlike your radio, okay? That's receiving a signal. Your mind is an open receiver type of something like that. You know what I mean? Which is why you can't identify with your mind, like Eckhart Tolle says in The Power of Now. If you identify with your mind, you're identifying with a whole bunch of things that don't even belong to you in general. I mean, I know you've had a lot of times where your mind has thought some pretty crazy stuff, and you thought, man, I don't know where that came from. We've all had that happen. But long story short, this book is about this man and his conversation with the Almighty. And if you ask me, I've read this, and I'll tell you what, the things that the man is saying, that God is saying, because it takes place as a conversation between God and this man. So he'd write something, a question, and God would answer it. And basically, after a while, he said that it was like taking dictation, basically. And so, we're at this point in the book. I'm going to start here in, I believe it's chapter 1, but it's into chapter 1 a ways. And the man asks God, he says, well, why are we here? And forewarning, we're going to do a good bit of reading today, so I'm going to do my best to read it as clear as I can. Forgive me if I have to back up and go over it again. I'm still new at this, and I'm just doing the best I can to help wake up the world. I want to help people understand the things that I'm beginning to understand. The things that I'm learning, I want to share with the world, because we are all one. We are one spirit. We are one in the spirit, and separation is an illusion. And the world is waking up to that realization, and it's such an exciting time to be living in, because the world waking up, people starting to think like-minded, starting to walk away from the dogma of thousands of years of control and fear-mongering, basically. So, without further ado, we're going to go with this now, okay? So, Neil asked God, he said, if we're not here to learn lessons in this life, then why are we here? And God says, to remember and recreate who you are. I should have told you, I have told you over and over again. You do not believe me. Yet that is well as it should be. For truly, if you do not create yourself as who you are, that you cannot be. Simple enough, right? Okay, you lost me. Let's go back to this school bit. I've heard teacher after teacher tell us that life is school. I'm frankly shocked to hear you deny that. And then God says, school is a place you go if there's something you do not know and that you want to know. It is not a place you go if you already know a thing and simply want to experience your knowingness. Life, as you call it, is an opportunity for you to know experientially what you already know conceptually. You need to learn nothing to do this. You need to merely remember what you already know and act on it. So God is basically telling him, you already know these things that you feel you need to learn. You already know it conceptually, but what you need to do is know it experientially. In other words, experience is the reason we're here. and you'll get to understand it as we go on. God says, after the man says, I'm not sure I understand, God says, let's start here. Now, this is kind of a tongue twister eventually. It goes, the soul, your soul, knows all there is to know all the time inside of you, your soul. There's nothing hidden to it, nothing unknown. Yet, knowing is not enough. The soul seeks to experience. You can know yourself to be generous, but unless you do something which displays generosity, you have nothing but a concept. You can know yourself to be kind, but unless you do someone a kindness, you have nothing but an idea about yourself. It is your soul's only desire to turn its grandest concept about itself into its greatest experience. Until concept becomes experience, all there is speculation. I have been speculating about myself for a long time, longer than you and I could collectively remember, longer than the age of this universe times the age of the universe. You see then how young it is, how new is my experience of myself. Now, as we go on here, you're going to start to understand that God is telling this man something. He's telling him something. He's telling him who he is, and that he just needs to remember. It's kind of like Neo in the Matrix, if you think about it. You know, Morpheus kept telling him, you are the one. And he couldn't fathom that. He couldn't, I'm the one what? You know, like, what? What am I? That's so special. And then Morpheus had to put him through these experiences. He had to experience all kinds of things for him to get to the truth of what he actually was. But when he did realize what he was, and he started walking in his power, oh, well, you remember the movie. It speaks for itself. There was nothing that could touch him. Now, Neil says to God, he goes, you've lost me again. Your experience of yourself? God, what are you talking about? God says, yes, let me explain it to you this way. In the beginning, that which is all there was, and there was nothing else. Yet all that is could not know itself, because all that is all there was, and there was nothing else. And so, all that is, God, was not. For in the absence of something else, all that is not. I don't know if God's trying to say he was lonely. I doubt he was lonely, but there was only him, her, them. Forgive me if I refer to God as a he. I know the Lord is no gender. It's a spirit. And the Bible even says that. This is the great is. This is the great is. Not is to which mystics have referred from the beginning of time. Now, all that is knew it was all there was. God knew there was nothing else but him, her, them, it. But this was not enough, for it could only know its utter magnificence conceptually, not experientially, because it was all there was. How could it know itself experientially if all there was it, and there was no reference? So it says, yet the experience of itself is that for which it longed, for it wanted to know what it felt like to be so magnificent. Still, this was impossible, because the very term magnificent is a relative term. All that is could not know what it felt like to be magnificent unless that which is not showed up. In the absence of that which is not, that which is not. Told you, tongue twister, right? And God asked him, do you understand this? I would have been like, my smoke would have been coming out of my ears. But I've read this a number of times, so I understand now. And Neil says, I think so, keep going. Basically, God, I think you understand where he's coming from. God is saying that I'm all there ever was. I'm all there is. And if there's an absence of something else, then how can I measure against something else and experience myself? I think that's what he's getting at. And so he goes, I think I understand. Keep going. So God goes, all right. The one thing that is new is that there was nothing else. And so it could and would never know itself from a reference point outside of itself. Such a point did not exist because there was only God. Only one reference point existed, and that was the single place within. The is not is, and the am not am. Still, the all of everything chose to know itself experientially. God knows all, but God wanted to experience. You know how the phrase, we are the universe experiencing itself? You kind of get where I'm going with this? You get where this is going with this? It's amazing. It really is. When you understand this, you understand what you are. You understand who you are. And then the whole Pandora's box opens up for you because you realize you have creative power. Okay, shut up, Horace. Yes, true. This energy, this pure, unseen, unheard, unobserved, and therefore unknown by anyone else energy, chose to experience itself as the utter magnificence it was. In order to do this, it realized it would have to use a reference point within. It would have to use itself. There was nothing else, so it had to use itself. It reasoned quite correctly that any portion of itself would necessarily have to be less than the whole, and that if it thus simply divided itself into portions. I'll read that again. It reasoned quite correctly that any portion of itself would necessarily have to be less than the whole, and that if it thus simply divided itself into portions, each portion being less than the whole, could look back on the rest of itself and see magnificence. I get so excited when I read that. I love it. God's talking here, and he says, and so all that is divided itself, becoming in one glorious moment that which is this and that which is that. For the first time, this and that existed, quite apart from each other, and still both existed simultaneously, as did all that was neither. Thus, three elements suddenly existed, that which is here, that which is there, and that which is neither here nor there, but which must exist for here and there to exist. I get it. It is the nothing which holds the everything. It is the non-space which holds the space. It is the all which holds the parts. Thus, three elements suddenly existed, that which is here, that which is there, and that which is neither here nor there, but which must exist for here and there to exist. It is the nothing which holds the everything. It is the non-space that holds the space. It is the all which holds the parts. Can you understand this? Are you following this? God said. Neil says, I actually believe it. Believe it or not, you have used such a clear illustration that I think I'm actually understanding this. Yeah, you're understanding it because you already know it. That's the thing. Sometimes when you hear something in a book, or you hear something somebody says, and it resonates with you, there's a reason for that. Because you already know it. You already know it. It's just that you've forgotten it. We have forgotten who we are, and there's a reason why. It's part of a grand design. It's part of a grand plan. But if you think that all you are is this meat suit, very weak and fragile, bones brittle, could be broken at any point. We're very small and very fragile, yet we are the most dominant, most magnificent species on this planet. If you think that's all you are, boy, have I got news for you. This book has got news for you. Now God goes, I'm going to go further. Now this nothing which holds everything is what some people call God. Yet, that is not accurate either, for it suggests that there is something God is not, namely, everything that is not nothing. But I am all things, seen and unseen. So this description of me as the great unseen, the no thing, or the space between, an essentially Eastern mystical definition of God, is no more accurate than the essentially Western practical description of God as all that is seen. Those who believe that God is all that is and all that is not are those who understand, whose understanding is correct. Now, in creating that which is here and that which is there, God made it possible for God to know itself. In the moment of this great explosion from within, God created relativity, the greatest gift God ever gave to itself. Relativity. We're talking Einstein relativity. Thus, relationship is the greatest gift God ever gave to you, a point to be discussed later in detail. From the no thing, thus sprang everything, a spiritual event entirely consistent, incidentally, with what your scientists call the Big Bang Theory. Now we're going to stop there for this time, for the purpose of this video. So basically, I've tried to explain as I've gone along what exactly this is saying. God split itself into many different parts. So why? So it could experience itself. So it could know itself not only conceptually, but experientially. Those parts of God. It's you and me. You are God. You're God. You're part of God. Which is why you have the law of attraction, which is one of the many gifts that we have as humans. We have many things we can do. This is an age of discovery and creation. This is an age where we are to remember what we are and create an experience for God, life, magnificence. But how are you going to do that if you don't remember who you are? It's books like this that come into our possession so that we can know just that. Let's pray. And may the Spirit guides always lead you. May the Ascended Masters always teach you. And may the Source, the Creator of all things, God, always provide for you. Thank you for watching, and until next time, one love, y'all.